A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
James, that was a late-night address to the nation that could change the course of the Middle East and certainly change the course of our weekend.
Yes, Mark. MEGA, make Iran great again, says Donald Trump as he quotes regime change. It's serious stuff.
I'm Mark Stone.
And I'm James Matthews.
And we're recording this late on Sunday evening, the 22nd of June, day 153 of Trump's second term. It will be a day to remember, I think, when we look back in years to come and reflect on Trump's presidential terms.
Because overnight on Saturday, Donald Trump took the biggest decision of his presidency so far and his biggest gamble. The man who said he would stop endless foreign wars stepped into one as America bombed nuclear sites in Iran.
And so in today's episode, what happened? Why has it happened now? How will this play out across the globe and at home in America? And what could happen next? James, it was, I think, somewhat fortuitous that the Sky News team, we were all together on Saturday night, weren't we?
Yeah, around at yours, Mark, at barbecue. There we were, there I was, bottle of beer pinned to my chest in middle-aged fashion, and somebody's phone went.
Yeah, I still had my apron on from the mediocre barbecue that I had cooked. When, you're right, our colleague Emily got a message saying it has happened, and sure enough, it had. So I guess let's start at the beginning. What did happen, James?
Yeah, I suppose we go back to last Friday, Mark. Remember, Donald Trump was getting on a plane Friday afternoon, seemed in good form, had that Friday feeling, and he was asked about bombing Iran. He seemed vague at that point on a timeline, to the point where he probably felt that we all had the weekend off, but actually that was part of the deception plan. That was the day that he gave the order to send the bombers in. 7 of them were carrying bombs for what the Americans called Operation Midnight Hammer. Now, they flew with fighter aircraft in support. When they got to Iran, targeted 3 of its nuclear facilities. This was Saturday night, overnight. These facilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. The B-2s, well, they dropped 14 MOPs, massive ordnance penetrators. These things weigh 30,000 pounds. And I'm about to say, Mark, 30,000 pounds. What do you think that weighs the same as?
Go on.
A London bus. It actually does.
It's always a London bus.
Yeah.
Each of these B-2 bombers can carry 2 of these. So that's quite extraordinary. They're carrying effectively 2 London buses in their belly and dropping them from a very high height.
And of course, the need for the MOP is the fact the US and the Israelis believe the most developed nuclear sites in Iran are embedded deep in the mountains. The bunker buster hits the parts that other bombs cannot reach. One after the other is fired into the same spot.
Yeah, things moved very fast on Saturday night. Within minutes of Trump confirming that the bombings had happened, he then confirmed a rare 10 p.m. address to the nation. You heard a bit of that a moment ago, but it was, I think, a message of defiance, a message of strength, American might, an attempt to restore deterrence in the region. And he framed it as a quick in and out, job done, he hopes. I was struck too, James, that he brought his top lieutenants with him, his defense secretary, his secretary of state, his vice president, kind of sharing the decision. The vibe seemed to be, this was my call, but these lot are with me too. And by early morning, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the top general in the United States, they held a rare Defense Department news conference.
Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump. The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back. When this president speaks, the world should listen. And the U.S. military, we can back it up. The most powerful military the world has ever known. No other country on planet Earth could have conducted the operation that the chairman is going to outline this morning. Not even close.
Pete Hegseth, Defense Secretary, squaring his jaw for the camera there, enjoying the moment, I thought. You know, he has the air of a guy in the bar, early hours, too much air in his elbows, wants to know why you're not looking at his wife, this self-styled warfighter who was clearly pleased with a job done here.
Yes. Absolutely, James. He might say he is a serious defense secretary, having just done carried out a very serious task. But I know what you mean.
Yeah, there is that too.
He certainly has. He certainly has a particular vibe, doesn't he? Anyway, so that was him alongside General Kaine there, who Donald Trump is always praising. Raisin Kaine is his nickname. Trump loves him. He's the general that told Trump in his first term that they could get rid of ISIS in a very short space of time, and so they did. So Trump is a big fan of General Kaine, and the two of them described what was clearly an extraordinary military achievement, an extraordinary military operation. I mean, those stealth bombers on their own, they look incredible, don't they? But they were surrounded by other warplanes to guide them in, guide them out, protect them, but also a fleet of air refuelers, massive refueling planes that joined in a sort of relay operation, joined these bunker busting aircraft as they flew across to the Middle East. So a really remarkable operation, and we've now seen that we've now had more detail that there was, as you mentioned, somewhat of a distraction as well. Some aircraft, some B-2 bombers flying west into the Pacific. So at the same moment that the stealth aircraft were going east, we were all focused on the fact that some were going west. And in fact, the Defense Department released a statement saying this is nothing to do with anything. These planes are heading to the Pacific area of operation. I think that was clever too, because it sent a neat message to the Chinese, effectively saying, look, we can operate in multiple parts of the world at the same time.
Yeah, the way Hegseth put it at that Pentagon briefing, when Trump speaks, the world should listen. But you're right, Mark, it was an enormous, extensive operation in the middle of the night, hitting these three sites. What we don't know yet is how extensive the damage is in these three places, Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. Maxar Technologies, the satellite company, they published images on Sunday showing fresh craters at the site of the bombings. But although Hegseth, he said that the bombings had a devastating impact on Iran's nuclear program, we don't know if it's totally derailed the country's desire to enrich its nuclear energy. Trump used the word obliterated in terms of Iran's nuclear ambitions, but that was revised downwards, interestingly, by General Dan Kaine. He spoke of extremely severe damage only, something less.
Yeah, that being said, the US has said that no Iranian troops or civilians were targeted, and that the US bombers went in and out of Iranian airspace without even a shot being fired. So plenty for the Trump administration to be happy about at this stage. And they have threatened more substantial strikes should Iran not comply now with America's demands.
Yeah, the US, they want Iran to come to the negotiating table. They're obviously looking at a one and done scenario, as they call it here. The Iranians, of course, might well have other ideas. Their foreign minister has announced he's traveling to Moscow to meet Vladimir Putin. Remember, Iran's been supplying military equipment to Russia for its war in Ukraine. Of course, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's extremely pleased, sounded almost giddy that the US had joined its fight.
Our dear friend our great ally, and your great leader, President Donald J. Trump. I told him of our need to act. He understood it very well. And I knew that when push comes to shove, he would do the right thing. He would do the right thing for America. He would do the right thing for the free world. He would do the right thing for civilization. He helped us a lot in defending the skies of Israel with THAAD batteries here, with Aegis ships in the Mediterranean, with American pilots flying alongside our pilots shooting down drones. And then he decided, and we talked about it, he decided to act to ensure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons, and therefore that Iran does not have nuclear enrichment capability. I trusted him, and I think that he's proven what a great leader he is and what a great friend of Israel he is. Second to none, and none can compare with him.
As you can imagine, though, the Iranians are not happy at all. Their foreign minister gave a statement at lunchtime on Sunday in Istanbul where he condemned the attack and warned of what he said, and I'm quoting here, where would be everlasting consequences for the United States after these attacks.
The world must not forget that it was the United States which, in the midst of a process to forge a diplomatic outcome, betrayed diplomacy by supporting the genocidal Israeli regime's launch of an illegal war of aggression on the Iranian nation. The US administration holds sole and full responsibility for the consequences of its actions, including the Islamic Republic of Iran's right to self-defense under the principles of the United Charter. Iran reserves all options to defend its security interests and people.
It's an open question, Mark, isn't it? You know, do the Iranians still have their enrichment program still intact? Tehran have said it's not been affected. Iran's foreign minister has said its nuclear knowledge can't be destroyed by bombing. But Trump and his cabinet, they clearly believe that they have, in Trump's words, taken the bomb out of Iran's hands.
Yeah, but as you alluded to a moment ago, it's become clear through the course of the day, as we've heard different administration officials speak, that they're kind of trying to reframe what Trump said. Of course, he's Trump. He would always present it as a spectacular success, but it's much more nuanced than that. I don't think, if you talk to any experts on Iran going back many years, they will all tell you the same thing, that it is impossible to bomb Iran out of having a nuclear weapon, because, as you point out, you cannot destroy knowledge, and it's very hard to destroy a lot of the enriched uranium as well. And interestingly, there are no recordings of elevated radiation levels at any of the three nuclear sites, suggesting perhaps that the nuclear material was either not substantially damaged or maybe that it was moved from those locations.
Yeah, the question is, I suppose, Mark, why now? Certainly, this was an opportunistic attack by the United States. Israel, has degraded Iran's defenses clearly. And, for decades now, the view in the West is that something had to be done about Iran and its ambitions to have a nuclear bomb. So I suppose Trump might have seen the timing as never having been better. The question remains, okay, the timing's better, but is the timing right? We have spoken before on the podcast about US intelligence, this conclusion that the Americans have, intelligence community, that Iran wasn't close to a nuclear bomb. Hegseth was asked in his Pentagon briefing about the basis of it all, intelligence at the heart of it. Was the intelligence American, or did it come from other countries? He said that this attack was about the defense of Israel and, the defense of Israel going forward. The Iranians might well look at this and see America tethered to the Israeli cause, with Netanyahu having a clear and definitive influence over Trump. And as Netanyahu would have it, it very much involves regime change.
Yeah, and right on cue, late on Sunday afternoon, just an hour or two before we started recording this, Trump posted a message of real significance on Truth Social. He wrote, "It is not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, capital letters, why wouldn't there be a regime change?" And then he wrote, "MIGA, make Iran great again. More pressure on the Iranians, an extension, I feel, of his vibe at that address to the nation, where he said that hitting the nuclear sites was the hardest bit done. His inference was that it would be much easier to take out the leadership of Iran if they wanted to. But that would take this thing once again into a whole new area.
There's been an emergency meeting at the UN Security Council about this on Sunday, Mark, prompted by the Iranians. So that's going on at the UN. Not the last we'll hear from that forum. Donald Trump, you mentioned one of his Truth Social posts. There was another one on Sunday. He said this: great unity in the Republican Party, perhaps unity like we have never seen before. Now let's get the great big beautiful bill done. Remember that. Goes on to say, our country is doing great. MAGA in capital letters with an exclamation mark. You know, it's almost as if, you know, the attack on the Iranians was yesterday's story. Clearly, this is an effort to shore up support within his party. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, Donald Trump has a short attention span. He wants to move on to the next issue as quickly as he can, which is why, as you say, they're hoping that this is a quick in and out, job done, line drawn underneath. Iran comes to the negotiating table and everyone lives happily ever after in a non-nuclear world. Wouldn't that be nice? But I think it might just be a little more complicated than that. In terms of the domestic reaction, it's fascinating. We were talking last week about the civil war among the MAGA crowd. I've been struck that the likes of Steve Bannon seem to have seemed slightly more mellow in their reaction now, saying yes, they don't agree with the president, but they hope that maybe he might be right, that it is a one strike in and out. Other staunch supporters of Israel, like Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, he has commended Donald Trump's efforts. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, as well, another senior Republican senator, the Speaker of the House. Many more have come out in support of Donald Trump's moves. Even some skeptics, like his old national security advisor, John Bolton, that man with the mustache, everyone remembers him. He has wanted to bomb Iran for so many years. In fact, Donald Trump once said of him something along the lines of, all he wants is war, and that's why Trump got rid of him. Well, guess what? John Bolton today, very, very pleased that his former boss, a man he's no fan of, has actually decided to strike Iran. On the other side of the aisle, though, many House and Senate Democrats uneasy about what has happened now. Many of them, incidentally, they firmly agree that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. They're just worried about where all this goes.
Much criticism from US politicians on both sides of the aisle saying, as you mentioned, Mark, this was unconstitutional, an act of war that should have been rubber stamped by Congress first before the bombs started dropping. It's also worth noting J.D. Vance's reaction, I think, the vice president. He's made his feelings very clear in the past about US involvement overseas. I mean, this is a guy, isolationist with every fiber of his being. The thought of getting into a potentially very messy conflict goes very much against his politics. But he was on one of the Sunday shows, Meet the Press, to square the circle about his view on the strikes. Some political gymnastics on show here.
I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives. So this is not going to be some long, drawn-out thing. We've got in, we've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. We're going to now work to permanently dismantle that nuclear program over the coming years, and that is what the president has set out to do.
Yeah, political gymnastics for sure, James. I was really interested. I mean, I went to bed very, very late on Saturday night, Sunday morning, 4 a.m. or so. So by the time I woke up, obviously J.D. Vance had already been on the Sunday shows, and I was really intrigued to see how he would frame what had happened. And what we essentially got was the isolationists' case for interventionism. And it was kind of an impossible argument to make, even for J.D. Vance, who is usually an impressive communicator.
The isolationist versus the interventionist.
In one
it's
head.
The fight you'd pay to see, isn't it?
Yeah. But you know, what's also interesting is how Republicans across the country, James, will react to this. Donald Trump fought November's election by the strict mantra of America first. It'll be interesting, I think, to see if the leadership of Donald Trump's administration, how they will reconcile the decision they have now made with the public at large and their concern over this preemptive strike against Iran. Donald Trump is clearly trying to tell Americans who are concerned, look, this was important. This is in our interests that we do not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. But you can see how it could go a different way. If oil prices and consumer prices rise because of an Iranian blockade of the Gulf, the waters around the Gulf, that will affect Americans. And worse still, if American troops are hit, the sight of coffins wrapped in the stars and stripes landing back in America, that, James, is Trump's biggest worry, and it is how all this spirals very fast.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. It's a success until it's not, I suppose.
Exactly.
Time will tell. The world's been reacting, of course, as well. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has spoken to Trump this evening. And while Starmer's noted the importance and the magnitude of the strikes, he's called for de-escalation in the region. The EU and the UN, well, they've called for a return to negotiations and reiterated the UK's calls for de-escalation. The Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, which of course is a close and developing ally of Trump's America, it has expressed deep concern and actually in some quarters condemnation.
I'm just going to say on that point, James, I think, yes, Saudi Arabia's expressed deep concern, but actually, if you look broadly at the way the Middle Eastern countries, the Gulf Arab states have reacted to this, it's kind of quite muted. It's a sort of holding statement because, remember, behind the scenes, they are quite happy to see Iran have a bloody nose and Iran not to have a nuclear weapon. So they, like everyone, will be waiting to see how all this plays out.
Yeah, beyond the Middle East, all eyes, I suppose, on China and Russia. Russia is a key regional ally of the Iranians, the two in lockstep since they signed a strategic partnership at the beginning of the year. Worth noting, too, that the Kremlin's kept a keen eye on Iran since Syrian President Assad's government was toppled last year, with Assad seeking exile in Moscow. Russia's lost a key ally in Syria, and they don't want to lose another. China has also condemned the US strikes. What happens next, I suppose, remains both a mystery and of deep concern worldwide. The Iranians will want to retaliate. They've already done so by proxy, launching a barrage of missiles that hit parts. The Iranians will want to retaliate. The extent to which the US is in their sights, we'll wait and see. The Iranians will want to retaliate. The extent to which the United States will be in their sights, we'll wait and see. They have been launching missiles that hit parts of Tel Aviv and Haifa in Israel on Sunday. That injured 87 people. Sorry, let me just do that again. The Iranians will want to retaliate. The extent to which the US is in their sights, we'll wait to see. On Sunday, they have been attacking Israel with a barrage of missiles that hit parts of Tel Aviv and Haifa. More than 80 people were injured.
Look, I think Trump is clearly hoping that while there will be more attacks of the type you've just described that are successfully defended by Israel, that it will not escalate any further and that Iran will choose not to strike American targets. It's a big gamble. I don't think there's any chance that Iran will do nothing in the days and weeks ahead. But I guess they could mount a sort of token response, retaliating as they need to be seen to do, but not a retaliation of the type that forces an American escalation. For Trump, I think, James, there were always two key objectives of what he wanted to get out of this past weekend. First, it was to remove Iran's nuclear capabilities. He says he's done that. We'll see if he actually has. And second, to pull Iran somehow back to the negotiating table without any prospect of Iran retaliating. So all on his terms. big gamble. We will see in time how he has done. There is a fine line between the genius of statecraft and diplomatic recklessness. My sense from the Western governments that we've heard from over the course of the weekend is that their statements are kind of non-statements. Essentially, they're saying America did what it needed to do and was inevitably going to do, and we all want Iran to be prevented from having a nuclear weapon. They're sort of holding statements to see whether Trump's move is one of a lucky gambler or a reckless wrecker.
Yeah, the one note of optimism in the Pete Hegseth Pentagon briefing was when he revealed that the US and Iran were still in contact, both publicly and privately. Iran, he said, is being given every opportunity to come to the table and for talks for peace. So, yeah, there is hope. I suppose for Iran, it's a question of saving face without sabotaging self interest in the near term and the longer term. But we will, of course, be following it very closely. We'll be back tomorrow as the story develops minute by minute.
Yeah, who knows where we will be. We know where Trump will be, though, where he's supposed to be. He's heading to The Hague tomorrow, Tuesday, for an all-important NATO summit. The focus, we thought just a week or two ago, would be 100% Ukraine. Not anymore. There will clearly be talks about the Middle East, but I think Trump will see this NATO moment as his moment. We've heard suggestions that at ambassador level across NATO countries, they have agreed to a spending rise, to spend more money on their own country's defense. Donald Trump will take that as his win. But that is it for today for Trump100. Get in touch. You can, as always, Trump100 at sky.uk. I'm sorry we haven't done our planned Q&A episode today. You'd recorded it, hadn't you, James?
Well, we had recorded it, yeah, with a range of questions, answers, stories from the front, stories of daring do. It was me and David Blevins.
Oh, listeners, you are spared.
You're not getting it.
You are spared some of David and James's tales, but we will retain.
No.
We'll
stick it on eBay. Put it on a DVD.
We will retain some of those answers. We will do another Q&A episode very, very soon. Subscribe wherever you get the podcast and do tell a friend. We will be back tomorrow for another day of Trump100. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah, do join us then. The Donald Trump Show. Who can take their eyes off it? Bye-bye.
Bye.